Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joshablon, and welcome back to our series on humans. Now, today we are just going to be covering how to draw lips. Now, lips are kind of an easy one to do, in my opinion, unless you're doing like really up-close stuff, because really it's just mostly shading some specific areas. So we're just going to get into this. I'm going to be covering kind of the front view and the side view, just looking at it directly from the side at a perpendicular angle. So quickly, we're just going to do our front view over here. And to do that, we're just going to quickly draw out a couple figuration or a couple formations kind of by the mouth. So we're just going to kind of draw a very basic nose. So we kind of have our nose. We have the ball of the nose here, kind of going up, and a little bit of shading here, kind of all along. Kind of defining where our light source is, and our light source, if you haven't guessed already, is coming in from kind of this direction, facing forward. So there we go. There's kind of our very, very basic nose. Moving a little bit southward, there will eventually kind of be a chin down here. And that chin, a little bit wide, and then it kind of spreads out along the jawline. Want to keep it kind of the same all the way along. So there we go. That's kind of our first formation that we're going to be doing. I'll just do a tiny little bit of shading on this chin, just to kind of make it look a little bit more realistic. Okay, now we're going to be getting into more kind of lip stuff. So, where do you want to put your lips compared to everything else? Well, your lips are they're not going to be right in the middle in between both of them. That's too low. And you're also not going to have them way up here by the nose or way down here by the chin. That's not where it should be. Sometimes, if you just want to do this, maybe draw a middle line, just in between the very bottom of the nose and the chin, and just make it a little bit above there. It doesn't have to be very high above there, just a little bit. So, we're going to put ours about here. I think that'll be good. Now, you may be wondering why I put a V. Actually, that's a bit low. Yeah, but anyways, you may be wondering why I'm putting a V there. And that is because V's are kind of the formation that it's going to be making due to a small little part right underneath the nose. There's just kind of a little almond-shaped kind of divot in the skin here. That will be shaded in just a tiny bit all the way along it. Depending on your specific angle and that you're looking at it and all that kind of stuff, it may be more or less shaded. So yeah, just keep that in mind. It doesn't need to be super dark. It's usually not super dark, actually, at all. So we're just going to get rid of a tiny little... Oh, jeez, that's way too big. We're just going to get rid of a tiny little bit, kind of... never mind. We'll keep it how it is, I suppose. Just know that that outline isn't going to be there when you actually are doing your final kind of lips that you're doing. So there's kind of where the top of our lips are going to be. Now, with drawing this is kind of the top of the lip. That's why it creates that V shape, is because this almond shape kind of comes in and forces it down into that V. And then, just a little ways below that, you're going to have kind of another V. Now, this is going to be kind of the mouth line, where the actual mouth is, where you open your lips. And both of these are going to be kind of making rather similar shapes. And then we're going to have kind of the bottom of the bottom lip kind of be around there. So, we're just going to draw kind of kind of the mouth line. And it kind of makes an arch. And then the arch rather quickly just descends and kind of flattens out. So it kind of makes a little line like that. It'll make it on both sides. So just try to keep that kind of nice and even. Now, these top lips, they kind of just curve over, come back down, and then they kind of just rest there. Rather quick and easy. And then you might want to extend these a little bit. If you'll notice, kind of where you open your mouth, the top lips don't actually cover all of that. They only come out most of the ways. And also the top lips are actually angled downwards, and so you're wanting to shade those in just a little bit. So there we go, there's kind of our top lip. Now the bottom lip, here's kind of a trick that we can do. We can just do kind of a little bit of the shadow where the chin is. So the chin is going to be kind of this oval here. So we'll kind of make a little bit of shading around here. It comes up in here. And then when we start covering, kind of viewing it from the side, you'll notice that there is kind of a little indent here. It kind of indents from where the lip is curving in, and then the chin is protruding out. So it does indent a bit. And so just underneath where we plan our lip to be, we are just going to shade that a little bit. And that will kind of create the illusion of making a lip without even doing any like shading or colors or anything. So there we go. Now if we zoom out, we can kind of see that bottom lip that we're making. Now you may make the bottom lip bigger or smaller depending on what you want. Generally the bottom lip though, it does extend more than the top lip. Like I ended my top lip here, but my bottom lip doesn't end until kind of here. So generally the bottom lip does go out a little bit more. There are a couple things that you can do to kind of add to the bottom lip. So we're just going to quickly go in, blur this kind of stuff here just to make the shading a little bit nicer. Just a little smoother, I suppose. There we go. And the reason I'm doing this is because we're going to be doing just a little bit kind of different shading inside. You don't have to do any shading inside of the bottom lip, but by doing so we can create just a little bit of extra effect. So there we go, it's a little bit shaded there. I'm going to shade a little bit of this too, because the lips should not have an outline. I'll shade in a little bit of that too. There we go. Now with this bottom lip, I'm going to shade it in very, very barely. We're just going to have a few lines going through it. And what we're going to do is kind of show where the light source is coming from by adding kind of a highlight to it. So there we go, there's kind of the shading of our bottom lip. And then I'm going to just veer away from this part a little bit and kind of create kind of a circle where I didn't do anything. And what that does is it kind of creates the illusion there's a little bit more kind of a light there, a little bit more light hitting that one specific area in particular. And so that kind of creates a little bit of a highlight. Now you are going to be wanting this part here to be dark, your kind of mouth line, as it's rather dark in your mouth. So there we go. It's nice and done. Now if we zoom out, we can kind of see the effect that we're having. I think it's working pretty well. I'm just going to shade just a tiny little bit more kind of over here. Now, where your mouth is kind of starting to meet the edge of your cheek, you also want just a little bit more shading out here. Your mouth doesn't stay perfectly straight, and it kind of just bends out kind of like that. The shading arcs out as it's where kind of your cheek comes in to meet your lip. So as you can see, that adds just a little bit. You may not want it to just be these random frills that I did. You may just blur it a tiny little bit just to kind of give it just a little bit of a little bit more of a gradient, which might be nice. Now, here's where another part is going to come in after I just blur this nose. If you remember Riley's method, there is an important part that we are missing. And that part is kind of where our muzzle kind of shape was after we came off the ball of the nose. And we're going to add that part here. So what it's going to be is it's going to be kind of a line coming down from here, kind of meeting the sides of the mouth. And this is really important because it's kind of where the cheek is going to start. Now you can kind of angle these depending on how you want kind of your cheeks to be shaped or how old your character is, as these might get a little bit more saggy with age due to wrinkling and all that kind of stuff. You might add a little bit more down here if the person's older. In general, it comes down a little bit. It may not be very, like you may not be able to see it tons, but it does come down a little bit. So we're just going to kind of blur it just a little bit, make it look a little bit better. There we go. Depending on your expression, you might change its angle a little bit. Like if you're happy and say that it comes up to maybe here, you'd change it to maybe there and a tiny bit here. And it kind of creates that kind of an illusion. But we will be covering that in a different video. So there, that's kind of that. And if you remember from Riley's method where we're supposed to shade, we're kind of going to be shading kind of up like that. So I'm just going to quickly add a few lines kind of going in that kind of a direction. And doing that. So there we go. So that is kind of how to do lips from the front. Doing lips from the side is a little bit different, and it does cause some people some trouble. It's not the easiest thing to do, but it's also not the hardest thing to do. So there we go. That's kind of our shading on this side. Sorry that the shading's not super even. And yeah, so those parts on this side are very important. And yeah, so that's kind of how you're wanting to do the mouth from the front. I'm just going to shade a tiny bit over here. One more thing that might just add a little bit is if you just maybe kind of add just a tiny little bit of white to your highlight. Maybe a tiny bit of white kind of over there, but not as much because it's not facing quite the same direction. Just blur it a tiny bit. And there we go, that adds a little bit. Top lip, I'm just going to make it, oh, oops, opposite color, or opposite shade that I wanted. Just going to make it here a tiny bit darker. Around the mouth crack part, you might want that to just be a little bit darker on both the top and bottom lip. And there we go. That's kind of the basic kind of general way that you're wanting to do your lips. So yeah, that's your front view. You can mess around with it and make it super detailed if you want. This is just kind of really basic how to do it. And yeah, you might add a tiny bit of shading here. So, moving on to the next part, which is going to just be kind of covering lips from the side view. What we are going to do is we are going to kind of have our forehead, which is coming down, our little part here for kind of our eyebrow. If you remember, the slope that comes out here for the nose is a little bit, well, it's a little bit of a calmer slope. It's not as steep. Kind of have the ball of the nose kind of here-ish. There we go. Kind of add the nostril here, flare here, kind of. Now, around here, you're going to have it kind of start to angle down. Kind of come straight down, and then it's going to come out like this a little bit. So, straight down, and then it starts to curve out. And this is where your top lip is going to be. Now your top lip kind of comes down, curves in, and then it'll go back. And then, oops, and then your bottom lip. Your bottom lip lays just a little bit farther back than your top lip, so it would be coming out, but it comes out just a little bit further back. Like, as you can see, top lip comes out here, bottom lip comes out here. So it's just a little bit further back. So it comes out, kind of comes down into this divot part of the chin, which is why there's a shadow there. And then, oh, that chin's way too low, sorry. And then you kind of have your chin, which should be about here. So I made that a little bit off, but yeah. Sometimes you're going to have a really big divot, sometimes you're not. That nose is probably a bit too big for this figure, so sorry about that. But yeah, that's kind of generally how you want to do it. And I'm kind of saying that because your face needs to be separated into thirds. You got your third kind of here, so that makes a third there. Your hairline's going to start there, just to make sure that you keep your thirds. It's important. So, now we're going to kind of get on to just shading it from the side and how we're going to be able to do that. So, just kind of imagine how we're going to shade it. I'm just going to add like a tiny little bit of shading to this, kind of around here, a little bit coming down kind of off of here. Yeah, that's good. We'll blur it a little bit. There we go. Now, moving on with the mouth. We're going to have our kind of lines coming off the frill of the nose. So they come down to probably about there if you're looking at it from a side view. But because it's from the side view, we're not going to have an angling like that. We're going to make him have more of a curve like this, so a little bit more following the shape of the cheek, which is going to just be going out a little bit. Again, we have our top lip, doesn't go all the way. Our kind of mouth line does. Bottom lip, you can kind of just do a little bit of shading of kind of this chin divot area. You can go through and kind of shade as much as you'd like. And yeah, so that's kind of how you're going to be doing your bottom lip. It's very similar to the other method that we just used of doing it on its side, or well, looking at it straight forward. Just going to erase a little bit in here just to kind of make the shape a little bit more clear while we're covering. There we go. Okay, and so that's kind of how you're going to be doing your lips from the side. I'm just going to add a little bit of shading because it doesn't look quite right without the shading. So again, we're going to be kind of shading in a shape kind of like that. So we're going to just leave a little bit of, okay, yeah, so out, we're going to kind of have our shading. It comes up, kind of arches over, and it'll be meeting the ear back here. So there we go. And then you can go through and kind of just blur lines if you want, or you could just leave them in the hatching method of shading. It doesn't really matter. So yeah. Generally, if you make it look kind of smooth, it looks nicer, but it doesn't specifically have to be like that. I'll just add a little bit more shading up here. Here up where your labella is going to be, we're going to add a little bit of shading kind of there, because that's where that is. Maybe just a tiny bit of shading kind of in here, because it's the eye socket. And yeah, that's where kind of most of your shading is going to be when you're looking at kind of the side view of the face. We're not putting in ears yet. We're going to cover ears in a separate video. And so yeah, that's kind of just some general basics in just a little bit of face shading, and also just how to do lips with a couple of these shading tricks. So yeah, top lip is always darker than the bottom lip, unless your light source is facing from the bottom, then it'll be the opposite case. And you can just use the kind of area on the chin kind of here, where it kind of dips down, to kind of, and just shade that area to show that your bottom lip is a little bit lighter than your top lip. And so yeah, that's basically it. So if you have any questions, just comment below. If you like this video, be sure to give it a like. And yeah, thank you everybody so much for watching, and I will see you in the next tutorial.